Clare McGlynn is Professor of Law at Durham University and specialises in the legal regulation of pornography and image-based sexual abuse. Good morning.
Morning.
What surprised Georgie, and actually in her case, it wasn't Reddit that her images were shared, it was a different social media platform, was that it wasn't illegal.
That's right. At the moment, it's only a criminal offence if you share images without consent and you're directly trying to cause harm to that victim. And what we see in these cases is that the men are sharing these images and they don't want the victims to even know about it. So we can't prosecute them for that. And it's not clearly a criminal offence at the moment. It's a huge gap in the law.
And in her case, her ex-partner simply came out and said, oh, I didn't mean to cause any harm. And police decided there wasn't a basis for prosecution.
That's right. Her case clearly identifies this justice gap for victims like her who don't have an option to go to the police and see their perpetrator or offender prosecuted. And so we really urgently need a change in the law from the government. And hopefully with the online safety bill coming back before Parliament in the autumn, we might see that change.
Yeah, another case of where that it's going to be really, really important. What I cannot get my head around, we can talk about how women and young girls can protect themselves, and it's not just about women and young girls. Clearly, this kind of image abuse happens right across the genders. But what I cannot get my head around is the motivation or what's happening in the minds of mostly men that they think that it's okay to do this.
Yeah.
And I know you're not a kind of psychologist,
no,
so
indeed.
You may not be the best person to, but from your work, do you have any insight?
Well, what we know from these sites, and it's not just these large websites on Reddit, but what we have are small private groups, Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups where men are trading and sharing images. And they're doing it to kind of boost their status, really, amongst those men. It's the kudos they get for having these images and being able to trade and share them. So there's something about our cultures of men there where they're feeling, pressured sometimes to take and share these images without consent in these groups as part of their, masculine identity, really.
And it's also the culture of sharing images now that just wasn't around when I was a child, but I know from teenage children, it's almost completely commonplace for children. And when you grow up in that kind of environment, you perhaps don't have the filters to stop and think, should I be sending these images?
Well, that's what we need to make sure our children know about and understand. So we should be free to share images if we want to, but we should be free to share them with knowing that they're not going to be sent on without our consent. We walk into a corner shop, we don't just pick up a Mars bar and walk out because we know it's wrong. So our children and all of us should know that it's wrong to send on an intimate image without someone's consent.
So we really need to be tackling that from a young age, don't we? The case that we spoke about with Georgie, she was saying that in the vast majority of cases, this is happening as relationships are deteriorating or have ended. So quite often there is a kind of personal agenda going on here.
That's right. There are many of those cases with ex-partners, but that's not the whole picture. I've spoken to many women whose friends, have taken images without their knowing in a shared flat, and then they've been sent on. People have had images hacked. So there is actually a wide range of circumstances in which these images are taken and shared without consent.
If this has happened to you, what can you do if the police don't really have the tools to deal with it?
So I think the first step I would do is to contact the Revenge Porn Helpline, which is a dedicated specialist service which does sterling work on very little resources. And they might be able to help you get images taken down and direct you to some support. But you're absolutely right. At the moment, the police, there's very little they can do in some of these cases.
Can you take a civil case against an individual?
You could do if you took a selfie, for example, and shared that. The copyright belongs to you, and you could take other action to try and get that material removed.
But that is hugely complex and costly, more to the point, isn't it?
It's complex, yes. So what we really need as well, actually, is these large internet platforms to do much, much more to get these images removed swiftly. Because sometimes women like Georgie and others are contacting these platforms and waiting months to get images removed. So we really need those platforms to step up as well.
I'm not trying to find excuses for them, but I suspect it's a bit whack-a-mole with this kind of incident, isn't it, at the moment?
You're right, but on the other hand, these are organisations with the resources to be able to take action to, seriously reduce the harm. I mean, these are life-threatening harms, and they're destroying people's lives. So it's up to them to really take action.
Yeah, and as we always say, they're very quick to act if people share media from sports broadcasters, for example, that they're not allowed to share. That seems to get taken down very quickly.
Yeah, indeed.
Would you like then the new online safety bill, which has been put on hold, to be a top priority for whoever becomes next Prime Minister?
Absolutely. I mean, this is a potentially landmark piece of legislation that really could make a difference to all our lives, including our young people and women who are facing online abuse. But we need these criminal offences in that bill, and we need to prioritise online violence against women and girls in that bill, which is not currently the case.
Thank you very much indeed. That's Clare McGlynn, Professor of Law at Durham University.